Thank you for joining us for Future of Manufacturing Part 2. Our program will begin in 5 minutes.
We're not famous. There are no stars in the sidewalk for us. No statues in our honor. We're just a small Georgia town of complete unknowns. The closest thing to a world stage is 81 miles away in Atlanta tonight. Our movie stardom, our football careers, they never took off. Because we are not known for who we are. We hope to be known for what we do, what we build. This thing we've assembled, it has a chance to be remembered. No, we are not famous, but we are incredible. And we make incredible things.
I think at Gas South, we continue to strive forward, that we continue to push the envelope. Winning isn't a destination, it's a journey, and we're all on it together.
This statement was not created in a glass tower. It was crafted and developed by the people of this company who overwhelmingly believe that we are a family that cares for people, does our best to do what's right, and we want to win.
It's about making our customers' lives easier. That's how Gas South puts people first. That's how we show our customers that we care.
Doing right by our people, our customers, our business partners, and our community, it's really what we're all about.
Gas South feels like family to me in many ways.
What makes the Gas South way true for me is we are striving to be perfect in everything that matters.
Put people first, do what's right, strive to win. That's the Gas South way.
Some may say it's a small world. But we know there's an even bigger one waiting for you. One where you can outdo yourself by doing more than ever before. See new things, experience new places, create new memories. All in a vehicle that will ignite every one of your senses, especially your sense of adventure. Let everyone else chase the American dream. You're already living it. And this ride will make the life you've earned even more satisfying. It's 1 part power, 2 parts style, and all of the things you've ever wanted out of life. So skip the movies and spend a night with the stars. Immerse yourself in the big, amazing world all around you, and rediscover the fun of getting lost in the moment. This is adventure. This is joy. This is living. And you deserve more of it. Easy Go. Live larger.
Please welcome the President and CEO of Georgia Chamber, Chris Clark.
Hi, I'm Chris Clark, President, CEO of the Georgia Chamber of Commerce, and I want to thank you for joining us for our second day of the Future of Manufacturing. Today we're going to talk about the impact of COVID-19 and resiliency on minority manufacturing in the state of Georgia and get a little advice about how you and your company can continue to grow. Before we do that, I want to kind of thank our sponsors first and foremost, our friends at Textron Specialized Vehicles and at Gas South, and of course Deloitte, who continues to help us with our resiliency efforts here at the Chamber. So let's talk a little bit about where manufacturing is today and where we are in a COVID-19 environment. You know, the Georgia Chamber has looked at this in three different stages. Stage one has been the initial response, right? That's when government began doing our testing, hospitals and healthcare stepped up to handle our treatment, and those critical industry sectors were able to transition over and to continue to provide all the food support that we needed in the state. We're now in the second stage, this reemergence, where government is now focused more on contact tracing as well as long-term recovery. Individuals are taking their own responsibility about how to protect their own health and safety. And corporate citizenship begins to grow at this point too, right? There's a responsibility that every company in Georgia, no matter what your business does, you're now in the business of health and wellness. So having safety plans in place for your customers, your suppliers, your clients, your employees is absolutely critical. And then hopefully we'll move into this third phase, which is when we reimagine business, we reimagine society, even how we deliver education. Government will start focusing on recession, just as many of us are going to have to do. And we're going to see the emergence of this post-COVID economy. So let's take a quick look at a couple of interesting industry sectors. Now, first of all, unemployment has hit every sector in the state of Georgia. Back in February, as we were just starting to respond, Georgia had the lowest unemployment rate in our history at 3.1%. Just a few weeks ago, we were at our highest unemployment rate in history at 12%. And many experts believe Georgia could still be at 10% unemployment as we get into the end of the year. So this issue of unemployment, underemployment is going to continue to be something we all grapple with. Now, of all the sectors hit during this COVID-19, I think we can all agree retail and hospitality really took it on the chin. Now, why do we care about retail when we talk about manufacturing? Well, quite frankly, we're going to make the stuff, we've got to have somewhere to sell it. And that's been a huge problem for many sectors. In the early stages of this, in stage one, over 250,000 U.S. small businesses, retail establishments closed. Now, today in Georgia, about 90% of all of our retail companies are back open. Those other 10%, they may never reopen, or they're going to have to reimagine themselves into something different. Now, long term, though, there are still big concerns. Last year, we had more retail closures than we ever had in history, and over the next 5 years, you could see 100,000 retail shops permanently closed in the U.S. And you're already seeing the impact of that retail sector on manufacturing. Just last month, manufacturing output was down 13.7% in the U.S. And of course, when you're not making things, you can't trade it around the world, and global trade contraction hit at about 11%. So we are seeing this throughout the sector, but particularly hitting manufacturing right now. So what does post-COVID economy look like? Well, we're tracking 4 areas that we feel really are going to drive every other economic sector, including manufacturing. One is this idea of health and wellness, investing in health and safety plans, investing in the wellness of your consumers as well as your clients and your employees, but also the growth of that sector, both in the biotech and in new venture startups. You're also going to see manufacturers, retail, everyone invest in sustainability and resiliency. You saw that investment in sustainability start about 1.5 years ago. We feel it's going to escalate and really be joined in tandem with this idea of how we invest in resiliency efforts in our companies. Of course, we're all faced with digital disruption right now. While retail was going down, 21.6% growth in non-store retail. So people are switching to e-commerce, they're switching to virtual learning, Zoom events like this, and so more investment here, again, across industry sectors. And then what we're also hearing consistently are that companies that we're going to invest over the next 5 to 10 years in new technology are now doing it in 6 months to a year. As a service growth is going to be up to $344 billion within a year, whether that is software services, online platforms, whether it's investment in AI or robotics. Expect to see manufacturers redirect investment into these 4 areas so we can continue to grow the economy and be the best place to do business. So to continue this discussion and learn some good lessons, we have a great panel today. Yesterday we talked to 2 of the largest manufacturers in Georgia. Today we're going to talk to some of our minority manufacturers and get their lessons learned and what they're doing. So thank you for being with us, and let's go to our panel. Well, ladies, thank you for joining us today for our second day of the Future of Manufacturing. It's also part of our Resiliency Roundtable as we continue to help Georgia recover from COVID-19 as we move through this recession. Obviously, manufacturing plays a huge role in Georgia's long-term economic growth and strength. And so we look forward to hearing from you today about the challenges that you faced and how you've been resilient to come out of it. For our audience, let me introduce our 3 guests today. We have Dee Barnes, who's the president and CEO of Evans Tool and Die, which is a 3rd-generation company over in Rockdale. And I can't pass up the opportunity to say go Bobcats. She's a Georgia College graduate, too. So, Dee, thank you for being with us. And thank you for your engagement in your local chamber, too. And I know you were chair last year of the local chamber 2 years ago. So thank you for that. Yes, ma'am. And so we also have Sarah Irvani, who's CEO of Okabashi Brands, another 3rd-generation company as well, and makes incredible footwear. And I feel like I've got kind of both sides, right? I've got the hard stuff in Tool and Die, and I've got the soft stuff over Sarah on your side. So we're excited for you to be with us today. Thank you so much. And finally, we have Regina Maddox, who's the Executive Director of Next Generation Manufacturing, which is a great partner here at the Georgia Chamber. She represents manufacturers around the state that have a forward-focused vision about where they want to go and how they want to drive economic growth and their own manufacturing base. So Regina, thank you for the partnership that we have and all you do every day.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. So let's jump into it. You know, we've got people on the video today, but we also rebroadcast this on our YouTube channels and then our other partners, including Georgia News Network. So I know they're all interested to hear what it's been like for your company, but kind of how you're moving forward. So Dee, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit more about Evans Tool and Die, and tell us, you know, what the last 4 months have been like for you guys.
Okay. Well, we are a 3rd-generation metal stamping manufacturing company, and we build tool and die, a die that stamps out metal products for a multitude of industries, firearms industry, ATV industry, medical industry, commercial lighting, commercial refrigeration. So a lot of different products, which is really good for us a lot of times, because when there's one market slowdown, we tend to be able to balance that out with diversity. So that's been really good for us. Although manufacturing in the metals industry, it's been quite a challenge over the last 15 or 20 years, with much of that going overseas. So a lot of our challenges have been trying to compete with the metals industry, specifically with subsidized raw material coming in from overseas, and that just being very difficult to navigate. But we've been really blessed to be able to, you know, do well and do a lot of different things in stamping. So we have 4 generations actually here on the floor. So I have 2 sons and a nephew who are coming up in 4th generation to learn how to be tool makers. And tool and die is a skilled trade, so you can't really go to school to learn to do that. It's a 5-year apprenticeship for it to be a tool maker, and 10 years to really be a master tool maker. So there's a lot of apprenticeship going on, and I just love to be able to do that and recreate the very skill that manufacturing needs, you know, in to be able to do products at high speed, high volume. So with that, you know, we have about 200,000 square feet of manufacturing facility. We have a full tool and die shop that builds the tools, and then 67 punch presses that punch out products. So everything we make is a small part that goes into something, whether it's a golf cart or something like that. So that's a little quick thing about who we are and how COVID has affected it. Probably the same thing everybody else has. Absolutely not been there before. So that was definitely a challenge. We were just incredibly blessed that we still had business, that most everybody we shipped to was essential. So therefore our orders were still coming in. So we did not have to lay anybody off or furlough anyone, which was wonderful. We did have some slowdown catching up with us a bit, just as a wave of slowdown has come in the last couple of months for us, but still able to keep all of our employees employed and put them to work at certain other things when we were slow. So, but navigating that whole first month with sending people home and every few minutes trying to figure out what the next change was going to be and communicating with employees was definitely a super challenge. But we had a great team and seemed to weather it, and that's just been good. But I'm definitely glad the first part of it is essentially over as far as having to figure out how to quickly turn and do something different.
Dee, are you back up to full operations yet?
We are. We've actually, I'd say we've maintained full operations. I mean, as some sectors have slowed down, and we had a couple of places had to close for their issues, but really it was just a short-term slowdown. So while that was slow, another area was picking up. So we really have not, we're not at full speed with the capacity we were stamping, but as far as hours and production that we're doing on the floor, it's still the same. We haven't slowed down as far as our employees go, and so I don't know if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. Thank you. Sarah, let's turn to you. So tell us a little bit more about your company and what's happened over the last few months.
Of course. So Okabashi Brands is also a third generation manufacturer. And it's always fun to grow up hearing about manufacturing, and in my case, all the different aspects of flip-flop, which is a lot more than you might think. We have been manufacturing here since 1984, so equally have seen this sort of wave of offshoring that we have we resisted, and we really said we are a U.S. manufacturer. We need to stay that way. Part of the way that we've been able to do that is through sustainability and closed-loop manufacturing. So all of our shoes are recyclable. They're made out of bio-based material certified by the USDA, about 45% soy by weight. And we retail with some of the largest partners in the US, CVS, Walgreens, Target, all with the idea of American-made comfort. In the last couple of months, I think that it was, like everyone else, we were totally blindsided by COVID. But we're lucky that we have a strong team. We call it the Okabashi family, and many of our partners are essential. So we were able to sort of maintain our business. And there was a ramp down, but we've since ramped back up. And part of being a U.S. manufacturer, I think, is being able to be responsive and to work in an agile manner with your partners. So on the production side, that's what we've been doing. On the team side, it's really been such a journey. We're all human, and just sort of helping everyone navigate the quickly changing landscape. I'm so happy that the rate of change has slowed down to where now it feels like maybe there's one epic change every week rather than every hour.
Every hour.
We're looking forward to this next chapter, and I think that the pressure that such situations create can be very tough for teams, but it can also show a team what the value of the company really is. And for us, it's then been really bonding, and people have appreciated working with a family-operated company, and we've been able to keep our payroll whole and weather it.
So I'm curious, have you started to see demand come back up and your orders return, or tell us about that.
So for our partners who do order regularly throughout the season, we have seen the influx of orders back. And what's interesting is that their sort of other overseas partners, it takes them months to then catch up to the lag, what we can do in days and weeks. And so we're able to respond to them in a way that they would otherwise be left in a much less strong position. And this has really proved to our partners why they need to have domestic supply chains. And then it's also been interesting able to see this incredible rise of consumer sentiment supporting US-made products. We've been around for 36 years, and we've never seen this level of appreciation for US manufacturing from the consumer. So I think while it has been a challenging time to lead a company the last 3 months, I think looking to even the midterm, this is going to create structural changes for US manufacturers, all of which will not be negative.
Interesting. I know when you talked about the rising consumer confidence and Made in the USA, Regina lit up and smiled. That's good news, right? That's what we want to hear. Regina, Regina, I'm curious. Tell us a little bit what you're hearing from other manufacturers and kind of general takeaways from the last few months here.
First of all, I should share our organization under typical times, which whatever those used to be, we used to connect with manufacturers in ways such as I would visit manufacturers most days of the week. We would connect with events and things such as that, which of course Sarah and Dee have both participated in our women's leadership event. And we're very appreciative of that, for them sharing their best practices and such. In March, mid-March, that engagement with manufacturers immediately changed. It changed overnight, and much as Dee and Sarah have both expressed, our engagement immediately became responding to phone calls, responding to emails, responding to any questions that came in from manufacturers. And it was everything. It was all over the board, from how are other manufacturers doing this? Everything from operations to employee care to you name it, there were questions about it. So we immediately began, pivoted, and again, in response to these questions within 3 days, because it's so necessary. As both Sarah and Dee said, questions needed to be responded to, and they didn't have a week to decide. They needed to make decisions most of the time of that day. So within 3 days, we were hosting our first webinar. And one thing I will share is that manufacturers are very sharing with information. They are very willing to engage with other manufacturers, share their own best practices, and lead by example. And I think that's a wonderful thing. So through those weeks, since mid-March through really now, that sharing of information was very rapid. I know our organization hosted 19 webinars, 19, and we've never even hosted one. We hosted 19 between mid-March and mid-May. I know, and I'm sorry y'all are on our distribution list, but you received all those announcements, but they were it was very necessary because the engagement and the participation was very high and very real. So the sharing of those and those topics were all in response to those questions and the series of questions, and you could see the evolution of those questions as they came in. First it was, what are people doing? How are the manufacturers responding? Then it became safety. Oh no, our employees, how are we going to keep the employees safe? Then it became on to, we have to maintain our operations. Do we pivot and make COVID material, much needed COVID devices, whatever that may be, or do we continue on the path that we're going? So there are all these decisions that needed to be made. And that path, and I know both Dee and Sarah said this, but the rapidness of that change speaks, I think, volumes to manufacturers and the work that they've already put in to the innovation and taking care of their teams, because those teams were there. And one thing, a constant theme we kept hearing in our conversations was that they are so appreciative of their employees for being there every day. And so that changed. And so now, much to their comments, that exchange of information is now, it's still very necessary, but we can all breathe a little bit because now it's only once a week, and those questions are becoming more mainstream, if you will.
Right. I'm curious, Dee or Sarah, did either of you switch manufacturing and do any kind of PPP or PPEs during the last few months?
No, we didn't.
No,
we didn't.
Didn't do that. How about, did either of you access any of the federal programs? You did? And how hard or easy was that for you, Dee?
Well, I had a wonderful VP of accounting who handled most of it. I helped, but he worked hard for probably over one of the weekends, I guess, right when it was the beginning. He probably spent the entire weekend fielding and putting information together, and he did an incredible job. And so from my end, it was fairly easy. I wasn't doing the work. I was just sort of reviewing it. So, and we had a great banking relationship. It really did help us facilitate that. So it was a really good thing. And surprisingly, it turned around pretty quickly. So we were able to have that. And that has really helped in the slow wave that comes, the cash flow that's needed to hold out for the next thing. So it really has helped.
It did. Sarah, what about y'all? Did you access any of the federal programs?
Yes, we did, and I was really amazed at how quickly it all came together and was executed. We've been grateful for it, and it was, it was a process. It was a lot of work, but relatively, considering the potential complexity, fairly straightforward. And in terms of making PPE, we really explored it and tried to understand what is our competitive advantage. How can we really help? And at the end of the day, we are really good at making shoes. And so while we weren't able to sort of completely pivot to do a whole different manufacturing process, we have been able to donate shoes that are machine washable to frontline heroes.
Oh, that's awesome. Regina, have you heard, I'm curious, have you heard from manufacturers around Georgia if they have difficulty getting access to PPEs for their employees as they come back to work? Has that been an issue?
That is actually an interesting question. As the weeks transitioned through COVID, through the initial, I don't want to say shock, but that kind of is what it is. Like, we have to respond. Many employers were anxious about not only outfitting their employees while they were at work, but sending that PPE home with them to their families. And I thought that was a very interesting, one of our first conversations we had via webinar was one company in Conyers, SKC, mentioned that they were providing all of their employees and the families with that. As follow-up, we then received questions from people: where can I get this? Where can I get it? I want to do the same thing. Who makes masks? Who makes gloves? Who makes whatever that may be? So initially, I will share that it was a little challenging to find the numbers that were needed, but the manufacturers responded. They responded very quickly in making those available. And now there is a large number of companies, or there are a large number of companies that are making them and making them available. So I think they definitely stepped up to the need and supported locally, which was great.
Well, and I tell you, we heard from hospitals early on about needing gowns or needing face shields, and then we were able to connect them with boat manufacturers or any number of different companies that were able to produce them. And so I do think it was a bright moment for the free enterprise system to say that we can respond when there's a need and move forward. So, Sarah, I want to ask you a question, because your business is very interesting in that you use these different channels to distribute the product. But what we're seeing right now in Asia, as a lot of their manufacturers have their supply chains cut off and they've got the product but maybe can't sell it abroad, they're actually now selling directly from the manufacturer to the consumer, which you already do that, right? And so tell us what that business model has been like, and do you see moving forward, is there more of your volume you're going to do in a direct-to-consumer way versus using these other channels, or what does the future look like for you?
It's been interesting with that rise of sort of customers coming to us and really saying, this is so important that you're making your shoes in the US, that you are creating meaningful jobs, that there is transparency, and sort of having those conversations. We've been able to grow our direct-to-consumer business by now we're looking at about 3x within a period of 60 days. Wow. And sort of and also in a way that feels sustainable. And I think it's a combination of using digital tools to be able to share our story with more people, but also then we really feel that there's a word of mouth that is really gaining momentum and snowballing. And so it's exciting to see. And I think that then also helps with sell-through with our wholesale partners. So it creates this virtuous circle. I think, to the earlier point, while we were sort of first figuring out what was going to happen with COVID, we're able to redirect some of our team who might have been calling on small boutiques that were closed to help with social media and just to be nimble in that way. And I think that making progress in the direct consumer channel doesn't require a Silicon Valley degree.
Right.
You just what we just do is we think, what would be a message that you would say to someone in person, let's say in the supermarket, maybe not in today's world, but if you wanted to talk about the shoe. And using that sort of common sense filter, we've been able to make leaps and bounds in the digital channel.
That's incredible. Dee, I want to switch back to you. So one of the things we've seen consistently from all the different types of companies we've talked to over the last several weeks was accelerating innovation, investing in technology. I'm curious, what does that look like for Evans? Have you guys said, hey, this is an area we can accelerate what we were going to do over the next 5 years, or is this a new investment area? What have any action there?
So in just any direction is what you're saying. I think, with the economic situation, it has caused a little pause in, hey, we're not sure where everything's going, right? Just economically across the board. So really being cautious about, maybe even more focused about what decisions and directions we might want to go in as far as investing in technology. We did purchase actually a new piece of technology equipment during this time because a job opened up for us to start into a machining category that we don't normally do that type of volume. Most everything we do is large volume, but we did get a large volume machining job that's a bit different than stamping, so we did invest in a piece of equipment right in the middle of COVID, which was interesting because the opportunity was there, so that might be a good example of us making those decisions. But I think going forward, any large shift in our direction would take a good bit of just thinking and researching about making that move at this point, considering the economic situations of, cautiously optimistic in the rebound and what could happen. So I think right now we are still focusing on how to best get out the product that we are good at getting out to our customers, as well as creating a safe environment and how to navigate continually through what we have set in place as far as safety for our employees and pivoting and changing the way that we do things. And I think what we've learned is that we're a lot more flexible than we thought we were, at figuring out what we need to do quickly. And you don't have all day to figure this out. It's like daily, hourly was what was happening. And our team just really came together and I think as you might have mentioned, Sarah, just the family atmosphere of our business itself. Not only are we family, blood family, but our 70 employees are also family, and they've been here a lot of years, most of them. So all of us, working together with each other has been really, really good, even though it's been very challenging. So anyway, not sure about the answer of how I would say about investing in new technology other than that already.
No, that's perfect. Regina, I'm curious, as you've talked to lots of different members around there, what lessons about resiliency have you seen from them? I mean, what have you heard from, manufacturers in Georgia that really show you that they understand resiliency and they were able to respond right, pivot, be agile, just like Dee just said, and adapt?
Absolutely. A really positive thing, and it was interesting, Dee, you said what people in that is, we actually are more flexible than we thought we could be. Mm-hmm. And I think manufacturers, and I say this reflecting everything from the administrative staff of a manufacturer to the line workers, the people that are on the lines that are operating the machines. What I hear from folks is that being able to be flexible with both of those types of employees was something that they never had considered before, because many times manufacturers continue to do what they've been doing because that's the way they've always done it. And when confronted with very adverse circumstances in which they need to operate, I would say 99% of them have all just taken the challenge and run with it. They have done an extremely good job of determining, can we continue our operations making the product that we're making? Do we need to pivot and make something else? Do we need to partner? Maybe perhaps we're looking at new partners, and then also looking at their supply chain, much as Sarah mentioned. So taking all of those things into consideration and determining very quickly how they were going to maintain their presence in the marketplace and be successful, I have to give them all kudos, because so many people they took the challenge, they rose to the challenge and did a fantastic job.
Right. All right. So, Sarah, tell us, you get to give advice to all of your peers in manufacturing out there now. What were the biggest lessons learned through this experience, and what's the best advice that you could pass on?
I think that in terms of lessons, it's just to really to be open with your team. Week 2 of this, we didn't know what week 4 would look like, and that transparency, but also the fact that we approached it as being all together. I've come to the office and to the factory every single day, so that if someone has a question about the operations, about safety, about anything like that, that they can field it directly to me. And I think that I've really learned what an impact that sort of intangible culture can have on the actual operations in such a meaningful way. And then I would probably, it sounds cheesy, but there is a real impact of positive thinking, and yes, plan for crazy risks. I don't think anyone could plan for a pandemic, but also plan for best case scenarios too. And we've ramped back up to 3 shifts and are steamrolling ahead. And I think that if we didn't have that positive thinking that we could do that so quickly, it would be a non-starter. So I think that both of these are on the softer elements of manufacturing, but definitely vital.
Well, we're all in a people business at the end of the day, and taking care of your people is what's critical. Dee, what about you? Lessons learned, best advice?
Yes, I think the biggest thing I learned was recognizing the difference in our employees specifically, their emotional sensitivity to the issues going on. We have this assessment that we do over our team called Best Work Data Assessment, and one of the things that it highlights is a person's sensitivity to emotional things or how they respond. A high level of sensitivity is more connected to how people are feeling and how they respond, versus a lower level of sensitivity that can carry a lot more stress, but also is not quite as engaged emotionally as what people are doing. So I'm on the lower end of the scale, so I can handle a lot of stress, and I'm very calm, and sometimes that can not be a good thing. And so I learned that to recognize how people are responding to this COVID issue specifically, that there are very big differences, and it can be very big differences in what I might feel and what one of my employees is feeling. So I realized that I think the biggest thing I learned was to value where everybody is. Some people are extremely worried, extremely scared, and can hardly come to work, versus other people are right there every day, right? And it's not a right or wrong, it just is. And I have to realize to respect people where they are in their inability or ability to handle what was going on. So I think in communicating, realizing that and being able to communicate daily and hourly sometimes. And when we pivoted and set up a PA system out in the plant and just sometimes it was twice a day, you were having to come out and address the whole plant because so much was happening. Social media saying one thing, and to get ahead of the ball, so to speak, to speak to everybody so that my super worried employees weren't over there trying to figure out how they were going to live and then what we were going to do. So I think that's the biggest thing I learned, and I think it's a very good thing that I learned in that, and how to communicate better with that. Changed my management style a bit was one of the things that you mentioned, being aware of that and just helping people feel comfortable being at work when they had different responses. We had some people have to go home being exposed to someone, not really having anything, but being exposed. And then you have other employees who are like, oh my gosh, somebody's got COVID in the house, right? And so figuring out how to calm that down, but also be very aware of the dangers possibly of what was going on, and making sure everybody could stay distant. And we are so blessed that our plant is spread apart all over the place because the presses are so far apart. So people were able to do their job fairly separate from everybody. And so for the most part, that was much easier for us. And I was thankful. So advice, you asked what advice I would give. I think remaining flexible was probably the biggest thing, because without it, it was impossible to be inflexible and go through this thing, because there were some changes that had to be made. And you said a positive attitude. I think that is so right, because the question is, how are we going to do it? But having a positive attitude that it can be done. We can figure this out, how we're going to do it. Think outside the box, and with people bringing great ideas that you didn't think of before, were really cool that we might actually keep because it worked great. Even if it's not COVID anymore, these particular things that we came up with actually were better. So I think that's embracing that was really good.
Yeah, we've told our own team here at the Chamber there are things we've never done before that we've done the last 4 months, but if it works, let's keep doing it, right? Right. All right, Regina, best advice, lesson learned.
You know, one of the things that very early on that manufacturers were saying is that immediately, you know, we mentioned that the rapidness of the changes that were occurring and the need to react. Almost immediately, those their flaws and their vulnerabilities were exposed. Most manufacturers, of course, instinct is financial. I mean, that's just a first instinct of how long can we maintain? But then after that, everyone is going to have something that was different that they most immediately went to say, we've got to make sure we cannot be caught like this again. And so many companies have looked at, you know what those are. And it depends on what you make, what your team is like, what your leadership style is like. But those changes that may not even affect another type of operation have greatly affected other companies. So I would just say, you know what those very first things were, the first thoughts that came to your mind that you needed to respond to and take care of. That's where you need to make sure all that housekeeping is taken care of, so that should, heaven forbid, we have to go through this again, I need to go anyway. And I think manufacturers, again, flexibility and positivity. Absolutely agree with both of those things.
Right. So I think it's interesting, right? We've launched this task force at the Chamber to focus on the economic recovery, but also on helping businesses be more resilient. So everything you've just said is helping them be more resilient, not just for COVID, but for the next crisis or the cyber attack or whatever comes next. But I also think it's fascinating when I listen to what all three of you said. Here are my themes. All right, so I heard, be honest with your employees, be positive, communicate. Value each employee for what their own gifts are or how they're wired, right? All of that's such great advice for resiliency in COVID, but it's also great advice as we also deal with these other issues in society like inequality and racism as well. Having that same honesty with your employees, being over-communicative to them, understanding they're each made different. These are lessons that can take you far beyond COVID-19. So thank you for pointing those out. And thank you for what you've done with your own individual companies and for helping us recover here. And I know you've shared a lot today that'll benefit and help so many of our other Georgia Chamber companies from around the state. So thank you all for being with us. For those of you that are joining us today or watching us on rebroadcast, thank you for participating. If you care about resiliency and recovery or the latest updates, you can go to gachamber.com/COVID-19. You can join our ongoing resiliency roundtables. And I'd encourage you to join us on June 25th at 2 o'clock for a National Day of Dialogue where we'll be talking about racism and inequality of opportunity in the state of Georgia. So thank you all for being with us. And guys, thank you all so much for all that you do for Georgia. May God bless.
Thanks so much for tuning in today. We hope you enjoyed our two-part series on the future of manufacturing. Please visit our website at georgiachamber.com/events for upcoming events. Thanks again.